Hello and welcome back to Matt's Automotive Channel. We have our new Ecoboost motor pretty much ready to drop into the car. However, there's a couple issues I need to deal with the car first. One being the CV axle boot on the passenger side. It came off and is leaking some of the grease, so I need to address that. And also, when I pulled the motor, I lost a lot of what I think is transmission fluid. I don't know if it's differential fluid or PTO or PTU fluid. But anyway, I need to figure out, we're going to be low on something. So anyway, once I get those two things taken care of, we'll go ahead and get this motor dropped back into the car. Well, here's what I'm faced with under the hood right now. As you can see, you got a CV boot that has come off and has leaked some fluid, or has leaked some grease. And then I did, at one point, have a huge mess of fluid underneath the car here, and I don't know if it came from the transmission or if it came from the PTU. So I'm gonna have to figure out which one's low on fluid and fill that up, or maybe that's something I could address once the engine is back in. I know at least transmission levels need to be done at operating temperature with the vehicle running. But hopefully I can get an idea which one is in need of some new fluid. I don't see any obvious places where it leaked any kind of fluid, but I know I have because I had fluid actually puddling up and actually rolling out towards the garage door there, so it was pretty significant. And as far as the CV axle here, I'm finding it's very difficult to lift the boot on here, and I got this crowbar here, and you can see, let's see, I'll back this off here, that it's actually kind of supporting part of the motor now, if you can see that move. So I think I'm just going to leave it and deal with the CV boot until I get the engine back in, and at least this portion will be supported with the motor once that's back in, because we'll run some bolts through here into the block. So let's go ahead and get the motor in at this point. All right, get most of the weight off the engine stand here. I can tell it's moving up a bit. Now let's get the last two bolts out. There we go. She's free. Next order of business is to get our reluctor wheel on. And as you recall, we had two of them, one out of the Flex, one out of the Taurus, and they were actually very different. So definitely need to make sure that we put the Taurus one onto this motor. And this will only fit one way. There's a little protrusion here that falls into that hole there. So that way, you know, it's clocked right. There we go. And this is so important because without this, the car's not going to start. And if I left the Flex one on this motor, it most likely would still not start. And even if it did, it'd probably throw error codes and not run very well. Very important. Now we can put the Flex plate on. You can put this on wrong. Well, let me put it this way. There's a right way and a wrong way. Actually, I don't think you could do it the wrong way. Yeah, if you have this backwards, you can tell that this doesn't fit on there. So the part that protrudes outward is obviously the side that's got to go over here. Now, I don't believe these holes are evenly spaced. So you do kind of have to turn this and clock it around here till everything lines up. And there we go. The other thing I need to be concerned with is getting this mating surface here totally clean, because you want to fit it on perfectly square. Also, these alignment dowels here, these are rusted up pretty good, so I definitely want to get those cleaned up. I'm also going to use a Scotch-Brite pad just to get a little bit of extra, clean these up just a little bit more. And also, an important right here, where the transmission fits right in to this end of the crank. You definitely want that nice, clean, and free of debris, so it slides easy. I actually might even put just a tad bit of oil in there before we load this into the car. But anyway, just make sure everything's nice and clean. Okay, flex plate to crank bolts are torqued to 65 pound-feet. And of course, when you turn these bolts, the engine's going to try to turn. So I just put a little screwdriver in here that kind of wedges in between the flex plate and the engine block here. And when you tighten these, go in a star-like pattern like you would a wheel on the car. There we go. And then once I've done the star pattern, I like to go over it one more time in sequence, being very systematic, just to make sure that I did not miss any bolts. Before trying to mate the motor up to the transmission, you definitely want to make sure that your torque converter is pushed in all the way. And this one wasn't, and I had to twist it back and forth a bit like that, and then it finally popped in. But I think one good way to tell if it's in all the way is this part that goes into the crank should actually be recessed behind the bell housing here. So if you kind of look at it, it's actually almost perfectly lined up right here, and go in line, and it's right there. So yeah, you definitely want to make sure that it's in at least that far, and then also try jiggling it up and down. It should not wiggle much. Before it was out another maybe quarter inch, it was wiggling all over the place. So it would not have worked had I tried to just put the motor in as is. So anyway, real important, just make sure that your torque converter is in all the way. And I'm also just gonna position it so one of the torque converter bolts here is at the very bottom, and that'll help at least first getting the first bolt in. As you can see, guys, this is extremely tight fit. What I did is I used the load leveler to tilt the back part of the motor down. I'm gonna kind of shoehorn that in and then level it out and then down. So it looks like that's the way it's gotta go, but boy, it's so tight. Look, it's kind of hitting back here, front, kind of hitting there. And also have to be wary of the transmission and clear that as well. So just take your time and go really slow. Okay, a little bit further, you can see I got most of this, the turbo and kind of shoehorned under here. As you can see, not much room in the front. It's hitting some things. Right over here on the side. It's just so tight. Right, sitting a little bit lower. Now the lift hook there is starting to hit the front, so I got to kind of keep pulling it this way as I lower it. Everything else still looks pretty free, as you can see it still moves here, so that's good. It's not binding up too bad. And well, right there, the flex plate's starting to hit the bell housing now, but just very slowly. I'm just going down like maybe half an inch in half-inch increments, and just checking to see if anything's hitting every half inch, and then just lower it a little more. So very time-consuming, tedious process. All right, as you can see, down a little bit more. Things are still clearing, but just barely. And kind of looking here, under here, make sure that, oh boy, I can't really get a good shot of it, but want to make sure that the bracketry that hooks up to the half shaft is not in the way. I got to make sure that the AC compressor is not getting bound up in there, and make sure that it's still free and clear here of the bell housing. Very tough. If this engine was any larger, this just simply would not work. All right, as I continue to lower this down, it's hanging up on something on the back, and as I go over here, I can see that it looks like, let's see if I can get a shot of this. I believe the oil return line for the turbo is hitting that that bracket that bolts up to the block. So I got to figure a way around that now, and I bet you that's why it got broken when I took it out. I bet it hung up on that thing and we just pulled it apart. There we go. I got some light on it now, so you can kind of see what I'm talking about. But yeah, you can see right there that that return line is hitting that bracket, and I'm gonna have to figure a way. It may be we have to pull the motor back out and remove that and put the line in afterwards. Okay, so here's the problem we're having. I raised the motor back up, and as you can see, it's kind of scraping against this mount here, and I can't move that, but I can move that line. So this line here is what's hitting. So, and I'm sure that's definitely why it got broke off when we took the motor out. So just to let you know, anytime you pull a motor, one of these motors, you definitely want to take that line off first before you do anything, before you pull it out or put it in. So let's get that line off. I got a little better view of the line here, but This guy here, we're gonna pull off. Of course, this is just a couple O-rings in here that you can pull out. So once you get the flange bolted here, you can just wiggle this out, and we'll weave it out until we get the motor in. Okay, I believe these are normally either 7 or 8 mm bolts, but this is an aftermarket tube, and it came with some 10 mm bolts. So, let's get this off real quick. Okay, and with that out, we can swing this down like so, and then we should be able to just pull it out. So, there we go, no problem. Okay, let's hope it goes in a lot easier now. I think I got pretty lucky. It went in pretty easy without that oil return line on the right side turbo, or the one near the firewall. And I was able to get the motor mount in. Right after, I got at least 2 of the bell housing bolts in. This guy right here, and the one right up here. They were the 2 easiest, and as these came together, I went ahead and immediately just torqued those in and then got the motor mount. So anyway, the engine is in there now. So at this point, it's just gonna be a matter of hooking everything back up. All right, got the engine bolted in with 3 bell housing bolts and the motor mount. And so now I'm under the car looking at the turbo where we took the oil return line off. And it actually looks like it'll be fairly easy to get back in here. Access is actually very good. So just something to keep in mind anytime that you deal with removing a motor from one of these Taurus SHOs, get that line off first. Okay, I got a couple more of the bell housing bolts in. Let's see, one here, here, and then up here they go in reverse, and then there's another one just slightly above that. But before I get all those bolted down tight, I'm gonna go ahead and bolt up the flex plate to the torque converter. Remember how we left that one hole down at the bottom? This is why. That way we can spin the motor and line up the flex plate with the bolt that's on the bottom of the torque converter. Once we have that one in, the whole assembly should spin together, and then we can get to the other 2 bolts. The torque converter bolts will get torqued down to 41 pound-feet. Now we can start putting some bracketry back on the underside of the motor. This one I have labeled is right side block below transaxle. So I'll show you where this goes. Okay, here's this bracket, and it's gonna go right up in here. Okay, so you can see those 3 bolt holes right there. That's where this bracket's gonna go. Right, we now have our brackets bolted in, as you can see here. And we got our oil drain line from the turbo going back into the oil pan. So I think we're pretty much done here. And now we just need to torque these bell housing bolts. I believe they're 35 pound-feet. And get at least the ones we can here on the bottom. And then bolt up our AC compressor. And then I think we can lower the car and start working from the top. Oops, almost forgot a little dust cover here for the torque converter bolts. So just push that back in. There we go. Okay, this would be a good time to get our AC compressor bolted back up. All right, where this bottom bolt goes is actually a stud, so I'm just threading that in with a, I believe it's a 5 mm. And once that's in, then we can put our nuts on here, our bracket, and then bolt up the other 2. All right, we got the AC compressor now bolted in and our bracket here. And now we need to plug the wiring harness into this connector here. As far as connectors go, just went ahead and plugged in this guy from the engine wiring harness over here to the transmission. And let's see, now we need to get this wiring harness that's over here on the transmission side, and then plug it into the components over here. Next, let's get our starter in. Starter bolted in with no issues. And now I just hooked up the coolant pipes going to the heater core. All right, just rehooked up the shifter linkage. Now we can go ahead and start on some of the intake tubing, the turbo tubing, the vacuum lines. Before installing all the tubing and intake for the turbos, it'd be probably best to get the fan in next, because once this stuff is in, it's going to be, I think, too tight to actually get the fans in. So let's get the fan in next. Usually keep all the bolts and hardware for each accessory together. And it looks like for the fan, there's just 2 bolts that will hold it in. All right, just moved all the harness and wires towards the motor here to free up the space right next to the radiator. So we shouldn't have any problem dropping this in now. Fan is now bolted back in, and you can see you have much less room to work here. All right, next we can hook up the lower radiator hose to the engine. Next, we'll put in this part. This is one of the last pieces that we pulled out, so this will be one of the first ones to go back in. Now, this one may be a little different than yours because when we got this car, it had already been modified, and I believe this is a part of the bypass valve that's supposed to blow back into the intake. Well, I think they're going to atmosphere now for that noise. So anyway, I'm going to leave it as is, but anyway, I'm going to put this piece in next. Down here onto the rubber pipe coming from the turbo. And this is the pipe I'm talking about, this rubber one here. And we're gonna, okay, have that pipe bolted in there now. And there is a little hole here for bolting it to the valve cover right there. So that kind of keeps it in there nice. Okay, now let's get the other crossover on. All right, before we put in the rest of the crossover from here, let's put in this short little piece while we still have good access, and that is just going to go right here onto the inlet of the turbo. Or no, sorry, it's not the inlet of the turbo. So this is going to go right here onto the output of the turbo. Outlet turbo pipe from the left side is now connected. So now we can put in this guy. Okay, next we can install the crossover with the boost controller, which is right here. I got the crossover tube in, and don't forget to turn in or plug in your blow-off valve or your bypass valve. And since this is twin turbo, there's one on each side. And here's the other one. All right, and then our boost controller. We got the boost controller on here now. And of course, one of these lines here goes to the charge pipe, and then another one over here on the vacuum side for reference. And then this guy coming off here, which is this tube, goes to the waste gates. And of course, we have 2 turbos, so 2 waste gates. And that's where this pipe comes in. So it tees off here, and then one of these lines goes to the waste gate on the right side, and the other over on the left side. The rest of our tubing on. Actually, this doesn't go up here, this goes down here. And just to show you what I got, this one cluster of tubing connect here. Looks like we are missing one of our keepers here. That's kind of a bummer. Here, of course, plugged it into the electric connector there, and one to this tube, and then one over to the brake booster. And this has been capped off. I think this thing's been modified a bit. This obviously is not stock. Now for more of the coolant system, we got this hose. This is gonna go down in here like so. So this will hook up here. This will get snaked around. And remember that one pipe that we added with that little offshoot from this coolant pipe, that's right down here. And that's what this connector is just going to clip onto. So I think I'm going to put this on first and then just push it on. All right, next let's put in this upper radiator hose. And now the other end of the upper radiator hose. Now we can put in the intake hose. Okay, now we can plug in our mass airflow sensor. And at this point, I believe there's only 4 more connections, and that's going to be for each of the O2 sensors. We have 2 upstream ones and then 2 downstream ones. Next, we can put our battery box back on. And we can put our heat shield back on. And there you go, guys. We pretty much have it back together with the exception of the exhaust and the catalytic converters right here and a battery. So anyway, I'll get that back on. I don't think I'm going to bother showing it. I mean, it's pretty simple, and you saw it come off. It's basically just the reverse order. I think our battery is pretty much shot. This Duralast, I think, is gone. So I'll probably have to get a new battery, and we'll have to put oil in this. And then we'll try to fire it up. And if it fires up, then we'll address the issues with the transmission fluid and the CV boot. I just went ahead and finished up putting the catalytic converters on and plugging in the O2 sensors. The only thing that's not on is the pipes after the cat. I think I'm going to hold off on that because these are kind of messed up anyway. As you can see, there's some kind of exhaust tape that they're using to hold things together, and I think if this thing runs, we'll fix it up and do it much better. So anyway, at this point, all we really need to do is add oil and get a battery, and we'll try turning it over. Just as a real quick test, I put my radiator pressure test kit on to see if it would hold pressure, and it looks like it's doing a pretty good job. So no coolant leaks.
Okay, you ready?
Yeah. Crap.
Try it again.
Yeah. There we go. All right, that's good. Let's check for leaks. Looks like battery's charging, 13.7. Going into it. Well, it looks like it runs and drives smooth. No exhaust, so you can hear the turbo.
Runs like butter.
It moves.
It's definitely not a slouch.
All right, guys, as you can see, we have it running and driving. It runs smoothly, it shifts smoothly, it drives just the way as you would expect it. So we were able to successfully take a Ford Flex motor from a 2012 car, transfer some things over, and make it work in this car. So no issues there. There's still a few minor things that we need to take care of with this car. We have a CV axle boot and transmission fluid. We need to put the cowling back on, the windshield wipers, and a variety of some other small things that I'm not even going to bother showing in this video. There's plenty of other sources for that information out there on YouTube. So I'm gonna wrap it up and call it quits for this video. On the next one, I'm gonna do something completely different. My plans are to get probably an older Bug, a Volkswagen Beetle, one of the air-cooled ones, because they're very simple, and actually do an electric conversion on it. This will be a brand new experience for me. I've never done it. I'll be learning as I go through it, but I'll definitely take you through the process and show you all the things that I encounter. So anyway, if you want to see that, please like, subscribe, and click the notification bell to be reminded of videos going forward. And I'll catch you on the next one. Have a great day. Bye-bye.